it is just a little after 12, so we are going to roll. As is usual, we start with introductions. We'll start with Jerry.
Jerry Hunsberger, Park Township, welcome.
Tom Burr, Alamo Road Commission. John Financial Having Road. Jim Story, Alamo County Commission. Ken DeWeer, Belmont Township.
Terry Hoffmeyer, Lake Town Township.
Vince Bush, Holland Township.
Nancy DeBoer, City of Holland.
And David Van Gogh.
Steve Holbeis, Executive Director of MACC.
Kevin Blaze, Chris City,
Glenn Akia, Bill Township. Howard Bauman, Charlton Township.
Rustin Sal, Mexico.
Steve Redmond, MDOT.
Staff, Rob Payne with the MACC.
Lisa McCormick, who's not. Oh, also
Hearing on here, Tom Edmund.
And Kelly Howard, who's
We're open for public comments. Did you have one? Okay.
We do need to approve the minutes.
Okay, yep. The minutes have been presented, so if we could get a motion for approval?
So moved. It's Terry.
Support.
All right, any questions, comments, clarifications? All those in favor, say aye. Oh, Howard, sorry.
Are you looking at the minutes?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Just a real minor correction under my comments from last month. That should state pickleball courts instead of wiffle.
We'll make that correction.
Very, very minor correction. We're gonna get some questions, where's our wiffle balls?
Thank you, Howard. All right, with that correction, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you very much. All right. MACC watershed, I believe Kelly, you were going to grab the first one.
All right, so the first agenda item under the watershed project is a resolution to support the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative funding. So there's a memo and a copy of the resolution in your packet. So I wanted to give you just a little bit of background information on how we got to this point and wanting to pass this resolution. So on March 16, the Office of Budget and Management, the Federal Office of Budget and Management, issued a budget blueprint. So I don't know if anybody cares about that as much as we do, but I immediately downloaded a copy of that and took a look at it. So among other things, there was a 31% reduction in the EPA's budget proposed in this blueprint. And I pulled out some quotes exact from this blueprint. So if you haven't looked at the budget blueprint, it's basically a narrative kind of bulleted list for each agency that describes the reductions in funding and how it's going to impact the programs of each agency. With the EPA's budget, one of those bullet points relates to the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative funding. So the exact wording is that it eliminates funding for specific regional efforts such as the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. And then it goes on to list some other things. And then it concludes with kind of what they're planning on doing instead is returning the responsibility for funding local environmental efforts and programs to state and local entities, allowing EPA to focus on its highest national priorities. So apparently they don't see the Great Lakes restoration as a national priority any longer. So obviously this is very concerning to us. We have benefited greatly in the MACC watershed from this funding, and we hoped that it would be a future continued funding source that we could apply for continued grants to do the restoration work that we have been doing. So that's kind of the background and where we got to this point where we felt it was really important that we pass a resolution to show that we are in support of continuing to fund the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. So again, that resolution was in the packet. Hopefully you had a chance to take a look at that. And I'd be happy to answer any questions or take any comments regarding this at this time.
Question, to whom would this petition be addressed? To our congressional delegation, to the EPA, and
our congressional delegation.
Nancy?
I think Bill Heisinger is in charge of the task force for the Great Lakes, so he might be good with that.
Right, and I know that most of our, well, I guess all of the Great Lakes senators and representatives have already spoken out against this budget cut, and certainly are in support of continued Great Lakes Restoration Initiative funding.
Well, and also, I was just talking with the Haven mayor this morning about Asian carp and its issue, and all of that would wrap into this same kind of thing, protecting the water. So, you know, just because it says it's going down by 31% doesn't mean that's where it's going to end in the conversation.
Right.
So I think, you know, however we can positively focus our resolution, I think that's helpful. And I don't know if Heisinger would want us to do a presentation to his committee or whatever, but that might be also good to think about.
Yes, we can certainly connect with his office.
Do you have any idea what the cuts are locally? Have you seen anything like that?
You mean as far as
If it goes through as proposed?
Right, well, if it goes through as proposed, the Great Lakes Restoration will be eliminated completely. The existing grant, so we have a grant right now that we're managing through 2019. That funding has already been obligated under previous fiscal years. So kind of the current work that's being done would not be affected. It would just be future funding. So it basically just eliminate the program entirely from the 2018 budget. So there wouldn't be a new round of applications. And I'm not sure how it actually affects. I would assume we did not apply for a grant in this round of funding. Applications were due in, I think, February for the current GLRI funding. So I don't know if that was FY17 earmarked funding or if those new projects will not be able to be funded if this budget passes. So we did not apply for anything. We are kind of supporting an effort that did apply to work on the hemlock-woolly-adelgid issue and raise funds for treatment of hemlock-woolly-adelgid. And that includes Park Township. A large area of Park Township has been affected by hemlock-woolly-adelgid. So that was GLRI funding that was applied for actually by the West Michigan Shoreline Regional Development Commission. That if they were to receive that funding, we would be involved in that project a little bit. They may not now if this is taken out of the budget.
But just to give a little perspective, Kelly, the last two grants that we received in total, 700,000-ish or so between those two, the current one and the previous one.
Right.
Yeah, so, you know, it's been pretty significant for our area.
Right, and I'm not sure what the precedent is for having two grants given to an area consecutively. I would say that's probably fairly rare. We're probably in the minority to have received multiple grants to do basically the same work. So that certainly showed us, I think, that the EPA liked what we did with the first grant enough to give us a second one, and they thought it was important to the work that we're doing here.
We'd like for a motion to pass.
Yes, sir. We have a motion. Okay. Comments or more questions for Kelly?
That support was from
All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Kelly, thank you very much. Thank you for your work on that.
And we'll certainly let you know as we move this forward and we have conversations with our congressional delegates. And if we hear any more, we'll certainly spread the word.
Okay, you're up for the next one too.
Yeah, so the second thing is another action item. There was a memo included to kind of provide some information about a contract we seek to receive approval for to sign with public sector consultants. This is a continuation of the Regional Prosperity Initiative work that we've been doing on looking at sustainable funding initiatives for watershed management plan implementation. So we did receive additional funding from the Regional Prosperity Initiative, the West Michigan Prosperity Alliance, last summer to support continued work in implementing funding solutions. So we've got $10,000 in that funding that was allocated to hire a consultant to basically help us go through a process with our stakeholders in the region to determine which funding solution do we want to implement. If you'll recall, I think it was in November, I gave a presentation about the options that they presented. There were 4 different funding mechanisms that they presented. So now we're proposing to go back and have conversations with our stakeholders to talk about what we think is feasible, what do we want to implement, and then public sector consultants would help us facilitate those meetings and get feedback, and then also put together an implementation plan for us so that we would have all the pieces that we need to actually move forward with trying to get a funding solution implemented. Along with the RPI funding, we worked with regional partners to submit a grant application to the Healthy Watershed Consortium. And I believe it was at the last policy meeting, we talked about that grant because we had submitted it and we had asked for action to authorize Steve to negotiate contracts if that grant was awarded. We have not heard about that yet. They were supposed to make notices by the end of the month, so there's a few days left in which we can hear, and I'm assuming at this point no news is good news. So if we receive that funding, we've added an additional $10,000 in that grant to support this work. So at the highest amount, this contract with public sector consultants would be for $20,000. And we have scope of work from them under both scenarios. So if we had just the $10,000 from the RPI, we have a list of tasks and the scope of work that they would perform. And then they gave us a second one if we get that additional $10,000, so what they would do for that additional funding. So we're still kind of working out the details of that contract with them, and obviously waiting to see if we get this Healthy Watershed grant so we can finish that contract with them. So hopefully within the next couple of weeks we will know about that and be able to finish the contract negotiations and get all the details worked out in there. But so at this time we are recommending to hire public sector consultants to work on this project and help us develop this implementation plan. And so we are seeking to do that in an amount not to exceed $20,000, kind of pending the outcome of this grant application. So are there any questions about that?
You have consultants already identified?
It's Public Sector Consultants is the name of the firm.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
I thought that was the
Yeah, no.
generalization.
Right, no. It is confusing.
Pretty fancy, good name.
Yeah.
Do we know who
It's what it
public
is.
sector consultants you all get?
Yeah, Public Sector Consultants, for the initial project, we worked with John Baird and Mark Casarelli, and so we'll continue to work with them.
Last I knew, Ken Second went there, who had a real interest
I
in,
believe so, yeah.
but we don't know if he's a big part of it.
He's not, well, with the scope of work that they gave us, they just named John and Mark.
So you're looking for a motion to approve a contract to work with public sector consultants for $20,000. Got it.
So moved.
Thank you, Kevin. Comments, questions, further clarifications? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Are you covering the last one, or is that just information? All right.
Okay, so the MACC has a lawn care seal of approval company program, lawn care seal of approval program. So it can be companies or even government entities are involved. And we just met with them, our companies, 2 weeks ago. And we haven't brought this to your attention in a while, so we thought it'd be a good time to re-present it to you. So some background on the Seal of Approval program. It started back in 2006. So around this time, Ottawa County started having some conversations about the phosphorus fertilizer ban. And then 2 years later, in 2008, that's when the ban went into effect. And Ottawa County was the first county in Michigan to do so. The whole state then went into a phosphorus fertilizer ban in 2012. Phosphorus can still be used in certain applications. It can be used still in the establishment of a new lawn. It can also be used in agriculture, things like installing trees, or if a soil test comes back and says that your lawn is deficient in phosphorus. But the reason why we have this program, kind of around that time period, was this whole issue of protecting the lake. Our lake has too much phosphorus, and you kind of have the issues that can pop up with this. So we have too much phosphorus coming into our lake. So this is just one extra way that we felt like we could reach out to the community and have a conversation around phosphorus and try to limit it from another non-point source. Because if we have too much of the phosphorus, we get the things like algae in our water, which then can lead, if the conditions are right, it could lead to fish die-offs. So it really has an impact on the habitat and the quality of our lake. So before I kind of get into the actual requirements that we have the seal of approval companies write down and say that they will take, I just wanted to point out too that these are things that you can do at your own homes. When you're mowing your lawn this summer, or if you have a lawn care company do your lawn for you. But then they can also be applied to the cities, to the townships, to the counties. So any properties that you have under your government, you can sign on as well and do these programs and these same steps on your own properties. And so we definitely encourage those best practices. So the first one that we have on the list is that the company observes the Michigan Fertilizer Act in regards to use of fertilizer. So again, it's you refrain from using it unless you have those specific conditions that you are allowed to use it. This could be one that if you live by a body of water, a lake, or a pond, do not apply fertilizer within 15 feet of a surface water unless there's a 10-foot buffer. So if you have a nice vegetated buffer around that lake, don't fertilize the buffer, but that buffer is there then to block any runoff of that fertilizer into that water body. You really don't want to get it into surface water because then it can dissolve faster and then move out of the system. Also, we say that underneath the Fertilizer Act, spreaders must be cleaned in a way that does not allow that wash water to get back into surface water. So that's a very important part too. So number 2, prior to applying fertilizer, the size of the lawn is measured to ensure the correct amount of fertilizer is applied. Math is very important when it comes to that stuff. Also, grass is cut no shorter than 3 inches. And so again, this is something that you can do at your own home. Check to see where that level is on the lawnmower. So some important pieces of why no shorter than 3 inches. If you think of the blade of grass, that's its leaf. That's where photosynthesis takes place. That's where it needs to get its nutrients and food. So it's important to have that nice healthy stock on there. It also keeps the ground cooler, so you don't have as much evaporation. So you keep your ground a little bit more moist. It reduces weed growth, which everyone loves. And also, if you cut that grass a little bit shorter, the roots have kind of a reserve food storage in them, and you can actually end up damaging that. So if it needs to work harder to create new shoots, it's taking that from the root system, and then over time that can actually damage the grass. And the higher and taller it is, the more runoff it can catch too, and more debris it catches before it leaves your property. Number 4, this is kind of the big one. 4 and 5 are very important to us. All grass clippings and fertilizer are swept or blown off of impervious surfaces back into lawns to prevent runoff from storm drains, and every attempt is made to keep the grass clippings from directly entering surface water bodies such as drains, streams, and lakes. So, this picture down here in the bottom, I think we've all seen this at some point where you have the grass clippings right next to a storm drain, or they have the potential to flow right into it. So we don't want this to happen. And mainly because grass clippings contain a ton of phosphorus. They have about 4 to 5 times more phosphorus in them than leaves, which we don't like leaves going in there anyways either. But grass, they're even tinier, they can flow quicker, especially with that storm water. So they have 4 to 5 times more phosphorus than leaves. 1 bushel has enough phosphorus to create 30 to 50 pounds of algae. So, and if you have a bushel of clippings, it's about 0.1 pounds of phosphorus. So that's a very small amount of phosphorus, but that creates about 30 to 50 pounds of algae. So we don't want that getting into our lake. Also, so the main takeaway from this is return them back onto the lawn so that they can, that phosphorus can then go back into your lawn and feed your lawn again, or remove them and store them in an area that will not be susceptible to runoff. So that's the one that we try to drive home as much as possible with this program. Number 6 that we ask the companies to do is that they make customers aware of best management practices for water quality, so native plant use. Let them know if they're kind of more of a landscaping company where they're actually installing plants, to give them that option and let them know why native plants are important. And then also waterfront landscaping. So you have a picture here along the lake, and to increase that buffer, it's one more opportunity to clean that water a little bit before it gets to the lake. But then this also creates habitat, which is also really important. I always think about Lake Macatawa, when you have all of the hardened shoreline with the seawalls. To me, it always makes it seem like a giant swimming pool, because how would you get out of that, especially if you were like a turtle or something? If you were a turtle, you could not get up onto the lawn because there's a giant wall in front of you. But then this creates it so it's habitat for species to people enter and leave, and that helps our fish populations when you have other creatures that can get in and out, when that could be their food source. So very important. Number 8. So in the case that the resident participates in the maintenance of their lawn, a scheduled water and mowing schedule is provided by the company. And then 9, that they maintain current certifications or licenses with the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. Very important that they're licensed, especially if they're doing any kind of like pesticide or any sort of chemical procedures. So, mainly our ask is to you is that, you can do this on your properties. The City of Holland is a city that has signed up with us. So they say that, yep, we will follow these on our properties. And then it also kind of says, too, that if we are to bid out a practice to another company, that those companies have to be seal of approval members so that they know that they are also following those same procedures on their properties. So yeah, we encourage you to take a look into it. Let me know if you're interested, and we're always around. You can always sign up. So, all right. Any questions about the program? All right. Okay.
Thank you, Carolyn. Appreciate the work. All right, Steve, I think you're up.
All right. Well, included in your agenda packet is an item for your consideration today regarding an amendment to the fiscal year 2017 Unified Work Program. If you had a chance to review the memo related to this item, it notes that there was a programming error that occurred when this project was put into our Unified Work Program. We've got it correct in the monthly financial statement. We've got it correct in the Transportation Improvement Program, but unfortunately not so when it came to the UWP. So as the memo indicates, we're looking to correct that situation by amending our fiscal year Unified Work, fiscal year 17 UWP to the amounts that are reflected in that cover memo, with the federal amount of $61,500 and a local amount of $15,375. So with that, we'll get that in alignment with our other documents and actually be able to bill MDOT for that full amount. Any questions regarding that amendment to the UWP to reflect the amount shown in the memo? If not, a motion to amend the UWP to reflect those amounts would be appreciated.
All those in favor? Aye? Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Steve. And we are on transportation. Do you want to introduce this or move right to Elisa?
I think Elisa can take it from here.
All right.
Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to just give you some highlights on the new fiscal year 2018 Unified Work Program. And I should just give you a little background that on March 1st, Steve and I drove to Lansing and met with our state and federal partners and had our annual review, if you will. We basically had the opportunity to tell them about projects we've been working on and got to learn about some of the new federal and state requirements. So what I prepared for you was a memo that gave you some of the highlights, and I wanted to just walk through a few items. looking at this next fiscal year, there were 2 specific projects that we felt we needed to include in our UWP. One is a potential bike share program evaluation, and that's a result of an informal conversation that's happened with the City of Holland and other partner organizations that have been discussing it as a need. There was a survey done in the Holland area to evaluate who would potentially use the bike share program. And so the MACC has been involved in assisting, but this wasn't something in our current UWP. So we felt it's something that is important to include in the next fiscal year UWP and be able to offer technical assistance. And then an additional task is M231, Phase 2. Conversations have already been taking place to evaluate how that might come about, and looking at the potential for a study. And so this is another task that we as staff felt should also be included. And what I included with the memo is a list of all of the different tasks that we currently are working on. So it's divided into 4 different sections: more administrative, meetings such as today, policy board presentations, and preparing for our tech committee, as well as trainings and working with other organizations. That interagency coordination is an important part of what we do. But you'll see on this outline that I prepared for you that many of the tasks that we're currently undertaking, we plan to continue. We've removed the US 31 communication strategy now that that project is completed. And you'll see that we added both the bike share program evaluation and M231 in special projects and studies. The reason I bring this to you today is that this is really important to hear from you. We'd like to know if there's a specific need that hasn't been addressed, so that we can allocate time in the next fiscal year. And we certainly do our best to make sure that, that we're applying enough time to all of these important needs. So I wanted to bring this to you today so that you were aware. And I also wanted to just remind you of some of the federal requirements that we've been given. Performance-based planning, as you know, we've been bringing to you for some time, but that was something that was echoed by our federal partners, the need to continue with that. And also looking at our projects, both in the TIP and the long-range transportation plan, and how we can demonstrate the benefit those projects have to accomplishing our goals. So just kind of a summary of some of the highlights of what we're planning for this next fiscal year. Does anyone have any questions or projects specifically that you're interested in that we might not have addressed?
I have a suggestion to add, but I'm not sure if it's appropriate for this, so I'll take the risk. The no-wake zones on Lake MACC Tower, we just got notified that the DNR held hearings last summer and fall, both in the township and in the city. We finally just got notification Friday after several months that they've got some proposed changes, and I strongly feel that we need some help. That would be Holland Charter Township, Park Township, and the city in educating people, and certainly from an enforcement standpoint. And I know that this isn't non-motorized bike path and it's not roads, but is that something that comes under this?
It's transportation. We've certainly looked at cargo, and we've looked at, I don't know that we've ever looked at no-wake zones before.
We have not.
What could you think about it? We don't have a lot of time here. I want to talk to Nancy, and I need to know Terry and Don. The lake gets more crowded, particularly on hot summer days, and certainly enforcement's key, but education, I think. No matter where the no-wake zones are, people need to know where they are and where they got to be enforced. So we're going to need some help from somebody.
Yeah, we would have to consult, I think, a little bit with our state and federal partners on that one, if that would fall under the UWP, or if that would fall under the other issues of area-wide concern, part of the MACC's mission. Because if it's in here, then the feds say, we'll fund it. So that's the question for them. I mean, they won't judge whether it has merit or not merit on a regional basis. Their discernment will be around, do we fund that or not? But yeah, we can check with them. I don't know I don't want to put Steve on the spot. I think we'd have to talk with some folks in Lansing about that and regarding something like that. It would be a new one, that's for sure.
What are you looking for help with, Jerry?
Pardon?
What are you looking for help with?
I think materials to distribute, education component, certainly the Coast Guard Auxiliary, the Aquatic Marine Patrol, the governmental units have a responsibility. We need some way to organize and get some stuff that we agree on and get it out. That's a brainstorm. I think we got to talk to all the people. 75% of Lake MACC is in Park Township. I think probably the next biggest chunk is the city and then Charter Township. We see more and more stand-up paddleboards, more kayaks, more big, powerful boats, more jet skis, and we need to just make sure we try to stay ahead of the time.
So educational, not enforcement.
Pardon?
Educational is what you're really looking for.
I think so.
Thank you for sharing that. Well, that's what I asked for, ideas, because it's important that we're reflecting the needs in the community, and we'll certainly look into this task that you've recommended.
Follow up, Steve, to your comment about feds assuming highway funds funding a particular project that's in the UMB. Does that mean if the bike share program evaluation is included in here, we would be looking to use federal highway transportation funds to cover the cost of whatever is involved with that?
So if that task is in the UWP and it's approved, if there is funding allocated in the UWP for that task, such as we're doing with the Downtown Holland traffic study or something of that nature, where that's, line itemed in the UWP, it would be funded. If it were not in a line item in the UWP, but has been approved, then should subsequently some federal funding that is controlled by this board if a decision would be made to expend funding on that task, it already has federal approval. It's an already approved task. Then if we were to make an allocation to it that impacted the UWP, then we would have to amend the UWP. But if it's in there already as an approved task, then that step in the process is already there. So it can happen in in two ways, to your question about the expenditure of federal funds.
Are we anticipating that some of our existing highway funding would be used in any way to support that particular project? Or is it just preparation for future allocation?
I don't have it in my current draft FY18 budget.
The reason I raised this question is there's a bigger question in my mind. We have funding for contributed to the Federal Highway Traffic Fund coming from our gasoline taxes. So everybody in the room who's buying gasoline is sending money to Washington. Now Washington decides to carve it up and put it in other buckets and send it back to us, which strikes me as fundamentally wrong. And to the extent that we are creating a vehicle that will redirect funding that I believe should go into infrastructure, into other areas, I'd be opposed to that. And we get into this mentality of, oh well, it's federal money. It's not real money. Well, it's coming out of our pockets. And I think it would behoove all of us to stop and think for a minute. When you fill up your gas tank, do you want money going to fund a bike sharing project in some way? And I'm not opposed to it, Nancy. I think it's good for the city of Holland to explore that as a benefit to the residents of the community. But I don't think we should be using federal highway funds for that. Similarly, if Park Township decides they want to have a waterboard sharing project, or a jet ski sharing project, or a beach chair sharing project, whatever. We shouldn't be using federal highway money for that. If they decide that's a benefit for the community, let them find a way.
I think there's an element too that we've been discussing as staff is looking at projects that have an air quality benefit. So if bike share is a regional project, and that's why we want to evaluate, the scope of it, and it has air quality benefits, then that could fall under CMACC funding potentially. But without studying it, it's something that we have as staff informally been part of the conversation. Our long-range transportation plan has an element supporting bike share as a concept, though it has not been, we have not seen a formal study in this area. So to move it beyond the informal stage of just conversation among various staff members, we thought it was important to include it as a formal task. So, yeah.
Follow up on Tom's comments. How much is this evaluation going to cost? Grand Rapids just let a contract for $100,000 to study this bike sharing program, which, I don't live in Grand Rapids, so I can't comment, but it seems a little excessive. To find out. Do we have any idea if we're putting this in the budget, how much we're going to?
Yeah, at this point, we're not looking at hiring a planning consultant to do an extensive study such as Grand Rapids. It would simply be having a project that staff can charge to for our time. And we would be working with other partners who have already done some surveys and are looking at possible ways to implement this. So, but I think at this point it's just, it's been informal conversation, but I think it's recognized as a benefit to the certainly to the city and to the region. So we're trying to explore to the extent that we'll be able to assist in that process.
Thank you.
What do you mean by bike share? What is it?
Yeah, bike share, it could be as simple as 6 different stations throughout the a specific urban area where, and I use 6 because this is kind of a number that we had looked at possibly, where someone could come, take a bike, check it out for the day, and return it. So if you look at the Padnos Transportation Center, for example, someone who comes in on a train for the day could check out a bike and then use it for the day and then return it.
So like you see in Chicago with the electric bikes, you just take one and...
Yeah, although that's a pretty extensive investment, and this is more of a pilot study that would start small. So it would be less than 20 bikes most likely. I don't know exactly the final number, but 20, 25. So it's really a small pilot to see if it works. Certainly people who don't feel like dealing with parking downtown could use it, tourists. The survey that I mentioned that was done in December, it was done through the Frost Center. They found that there were Hope students that could potentially use it. So just kind of, there's been conversation, and I wanted to make sure that you're aware that these dialogues have been initiated, and there's certainly interest, and we just want to know what our role as staff will be and how we can lend assistance.
Have you ever thought of looking at like a revenue stream with a private company that would just take it over and you give them the spots with the city, the township, and just say, here's the spot, you can do it. We're going to charge you X amount. If it makes money, great. If not,
yeah,
I guess I'm right.
That could certainly be an option, but we haven't, we really haven't advanced to that stage. Yeah, so we've looked at
$35,000 a year.
That they would give you, or?
We would pay that.
Oh, I see.
So this is Plan B. A simple, a way to encourage biking, healthy living, exercise around the area, the region, tourism. Maybe have some at a motel, they could go out to the beach. They don't know how far things are, but they would rather do it by bike than. And the idea of having some bikes available is a healthy message about the way we value a wellness in the area. It would not be a whole lot of bikes because it's an idea that we'd like to try and simple basis, not the lock-in credit card, extravaganza you see at big cities. This would be a simpler, little kinder program, and just see what the interest level is in the tourism world and in the residents and all of that. So I think we'd have a great message about the livability of our area and what we value here, not without being too locked into some massive system that, it can be over $1 million, the Chicago system. And theirs is very successful, but also I don't think people that live downtown Chicago don't have a lot of room to store bikes, and, that's a whole different world. This is the very little area of West Michigan, and we would just like to make it more healthy and friendly and bike focused for people. I do think it's part of the transportation menu that we can offer people around here, and it would save on parking and congestion and all of that, and really say, hey, you're welcome. You didn't bring a bike, use this and see how far it is.
That's one question.
Yeah.
Not on this, but not on the bikes, but on the M231 thing. What are they going to be studying on that? Are they're still thinking of expanding that into the 231?
Right. So when MDOT did their planning work for 231 back in the 90s, they showed a alignment that ran from I-96 up near Nunica down to 196 east of Zeeland. Right. So they built that first phase from 196 to M45, and that was opened a little over a year ago. And now there's a second phase that runs from M45 to 196. So that's what we're talking about in terms of phase 2 with that. So, the ribbon had just been cut on phase 1, and we happened to be out at Zeeland Township. You may recall we were out at Glenn's new fire station, and he had said, hey, let's get working on phase 2, because we know how long these things take. And so he had, brought that to our attention at that time, and indeed, it does take a long time to move a project of this magnitude along. So he had mentioned that Ottawa County had, as part of their staffing for the planning department, I guess it's planning and performance development department, had hired a new staff person, and a portion of that person's time was to work on this issue as well. So they had staffing resources available to work on this. There was some local interest, so a small group, kind of a working group with representatives from local units of government affected by the Phase 2 alignment, as well as Ottawa County, and of course us as the MPO, have been just sitting down talking about, what do we need to do if we're going to move this along. So at some point, again, we anticipate that this could be a very long conversation. We should really have something like that in the Unified Work Program to reflect that, staff is working on that.
Good idea. I kind of thought it was dead, but it's good to keep it, keep it going.
Yeah.
I know I've been in meetings where the trucking firms said that it was easier for them to take 31 through Grand Haven than to go all the way to the 231 across Grand River. But if this was in effect, it would, I think, cut a lot of traffic out of the 31 going north.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and certainly, this is probably a fairly long play. The department's made a pretty significant investment in Ottawa County between the construction of Phase 1 of M231 and then the reconstruction of US 31 on the existing alignment in the MACC area last year. Those two projects are between 150 and 200 million. So, as much as we try to tell Steve otherwise, Ottawa and Allegan counties are not the only two counties in the Grand Region. So, they have other needs as well. And so, but on the flip side of that, you have to continue to articulate, and if it gets to that point, advocate for, improvements that you think is important to your area. So, these types of issues, particularly at this kind of scale, require a lot of planning.
And I know we took out communication with the US 31 project, but I would want to say thank you so much for the way the communication was handled with the 31 project. I think it was great. And we were just driving on it, well, we're always driving on it, but this weekend my husband said again, wow, this is really a well-done project. This is just a great road, so well done and very complicated. A lot of people from everywhere, all different jurisdictions you work with, and we're just very grateful for the excellence that you pursued in that project. Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome from the department. A couple things I would say along in response to that is that we've learned, we've evolved as an organization in terms of when we come in and do a project like that, how we need local input, how we need local partnerships to make it happen. That the communication was no accident. We started planning that with the MPO months in advance. And then we also started talking about the design months in advance, where the emphasis from the local partners was, this is what we like to see with this road. And then we were able to explain on our side, these are our limitations, this is what we can do, here are the standards we have to adhere to, here's the funding we have. And it's that coming together that makes these projects be successful in the way that they're both constructed and then how they're designed. So I think this is a great example of how that came together.
Really serves us well, and the team with working with you, I do think you could take that on the road. Okay, you got a presentation.
Listen, I got a question on the Unified Work Program. Is everything in this here schedule that you gave us, or proposed schedule, whatever you want to call it, is all that going to be paid for through the road funds?
No, there are a variety of sources. These are simply all of the tasks that we work on during a fiscal year. So we divide our time appropriately. 2.6, for example, is the West Michigan Clean Air Coalition. And we have, end of April, we have an event coming up meeting with meteorologists in the West Michigan area, where we let them know about the new regulations, we educate them, and then they go out and help us to communicate with the general public. So that's clean air funding specifically. We have a variety of different funding sources depending on the type of task. And Steve mentioned earlier, if we have something that is above and beyond that needs a special attention, data collection, for example, has had a specific funding source to be able to make sure that we have new and additional refined data. So it depends year by year, but this is kind of a master list, if you will, of what we work on.
Well, I'm just concerned that if we're, like, I think I agree with what Tom said earlier, we keep taking money out of the road budgets and do all this stuff. And I'm going to look at one here, downtown Holland traffic circulation study. I sure hope that's not coming out of our funds from road traffic. Let them worry about their own traffic study. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that particular one was funded by some leftover funds after that came from bid savings. And we had a chance to snatch them, or they were going back in the pot. So,
but I'm just saying, if we keep planning to do that all the time, keep taking money out of that pot, so to speak, we're going to get more or less stuff done on the highways themselves, which is this is all about.
Did you get a feel for how the members feel?
Yes, thank you. And next step will be to put together a document that explains the tasks in more detail, and then it'll be presented on June 5th for final approval so that we can have that sent on to M.
If you have additional comments, send them to Steve and we'll get them considered. So thank you, all good comments. Are you going to stay up for Green Commute Week? All right.
All right, I wanted to let you know that Green Commute Week is it's in process in terms of the planning of the event. It's May 14th through the 20th, 2017. And you know that this is a project that we have been working on as MACC staff. This will be the 10th year that we have organized this event. And I do want to go through many of the benefits of the program. Just to show you, this is one of the, this is a photograph taken of our leadership ride last year at Windmill Island. It is an event that has expanded in its scope thanks to many partners that help. It's not simply MACC staff that organize this, thankfully, but we have many partners in law enforcement that help reach out. They normally work with the schools, so we've had the opportunity to reach out to many elementary schools. And in 2016, there were 10 schools that had competed during the school challenge. Basically, when attendance was taken in the morning, they found out how the students got to school and were able to compete against each other for points. So this actually was very successful. We repeated it in the fall and picked up some additional schools. And then the winning schools were given a trophy and LED lights, which were given. The funding was provided through Herman Miller Cares. The foundation was especially interested in providing LED lights to improve safety for children walking to school or biking to school or taking the bus. And carpool was also an option for them as well. So the program isn't just focused on schools, but also employers, and there are over 40 employers that have competed. Last year, the 4 winners of the commute challenge were Cross Country Cycle, which was in the mini category of less than 10. Collective Idea, which is a software company in downtown Holland, Herrick District Library, and Thermotron. And those are 4 different categories so that employers have a chance to compete on a fair level. But we were really, interested in why it is that people have been competing year after year. Why is the program continuing to grow? Now in our 10th year, we're finding that competitive spirit goes a long way. So right here, this is the cath lab at Holland Hospital, and they made a real point to bike during Green Commute Week. The requirements are simple. It's 2 days out of the week. And that can be for personal errands. If you're riding with another person, a family member, that counts. But when you record your miles, we then can go and calculate the air quality benefits of those miles that are saved. So we can show that there is definite benefit to the program. So some of the reasons that we've shared with employers when they've asked us about Green Commute, certainly, people can save money on gasoline. We've been able to calculate gallons of gas reduced, reducing travel costs for the employees, and then also improving health. Many wellness programs find that this is a benefit that they can just jump right in and promote Green Commute. And then lastly is air quality. So you know that we've talked about the Clean Air Action Program, and this is a perfect example of showing community engagement. The schools, employers, and businesses have all been supporting this program for 10 years, and we can actually show the air quality benefits of people being involved for 1 week. So being able to show how positive that is in the community, you can just look at the impact that this program has and can have as people continue. After the week of trying it out, they see it's really not so difficult to share a ride or to ride a bike with proper planning. So another reason, recharging stations are a great incentive, and thankfully there are about 20-25 businesses that have supported the program. JP's, for example, offers free coffee if you wear your Green Commute pin, and MACC Transit has provided free rides on fixed route service through the week. For those who are registered and wear a Green Commute pin. That's another great benefit to employers. So we did the math, and last year, anyone participating in the week wearing their Green Commute pin could save up to $75 by sharing a ride 2 days out of the week. That's pretty good. So definitely some financial reasons and incentives there. And I wanted to point out the partners that we work with. I mentioned earlier that this is something that we don't do alone. We certainly do kind of the master plan and the vision and give everyone a to-do list, but we have great support from all these partners, and I wanted to make sure that you're aware who they are. Cross Country Cycle, Holland Area Convention and Visitors Bureau, Holland Public Safety, the MACC staff, Macatawa Area Express, Ottawa County Health Department, Ottawa County Sheriff, Petal Holland, which is a new advocacy group that's very involved in the community, Fellow City Cycles, and West Michigan Bike. So certainly some great partners that have been very helpful, and we're excited to start this next year. And I want to encourage all of you, as you go back to your offices, I'm sure there are people that share a ride and perhaps walk or bike or take MACC to work. And certainly they should know that there are benefits for making those choices, and encourage you to consider starting a team in your own offices this next year. So, are there any questions?
Thank you very much.
What time is it on Saturday? Are you doing the ride on Saturday?
The leadership ride, we have yet to finalize a location, but it's tradition to have a leadership ride on Saturday. So I will confirm that with you, and I'll report back next month.
I'm going to hand that off to the cycle, by the way.
All right, thank you, Elisa. All right, Stephen, back to you.
Yep, included in your agenda packet was a note regarding the FY 2017 Transportation Improvement Program and a few things that we're doing. You may recall that last month you passed or approved an amendment to the 17 program for some improvements on M40 at 64th Street and Cable Drive. In addition to those, since that was a new project bringing funding into the program, an amendment was necessary. There are other activities that occur that don't rise to that level of requiring an amendment, but I want to make sure that you're kept abreast of other activities that do have a material impact on the tip, and a couple of those are noted in the cover memo here. If you had a chance to take a look at that, you'll notice that we have moved a new project into FY17, and if you had a chance to look at the list that accompanied the cover memo, it was highlighted in gray. It's the first one on the list there, and it's Adams Street in Zeeland Township from 88th to 64th. This project, which was scheduled for FY18 as receiving federal aid, but the Ottawa County Road Commission had indicated an interest in doing this as an advanced construct project. So just as the name implies, the project is constructed in 17, it's paid for in 18. So we had it set up that way. It was going to be constructed this year, received its funding of $750,000 next year in FY18. However, due to a delay in an FY17 project, the emergency access project down in Laketown Township is still working on some right-of-way issues, so they needed to delay that project. And so what we have done is kind of essentially swapped federal aid projects. So the Adams Street project, which is already in 17, is being constructed, but getting all of its funding in 18, now is getting $300,000 of their $750,000 in 17. And then the balance of the federal funding of $450,000 will occur in FY 18. And then the emergency access project in Laketown has been moved to 18, and we'll get their $300,000 in that time period. So that is something, little switcheroo going on here. Appreciate the Road Commission's flexibility in that regard, but that really lined up nice since they were planning on doing it anyways. The other highlighted project on that first page of the program is the improvements on M40 that you approved last month. And then the last thing I want to bring to your attention is the last project on the listing there, the Riley Street project in the city of Zeeland, a mile from State to Fairview. MDOT recently changed its procedures as of the end of February that makes it possible for projects that are have exceeded the programmed amount in the tip and end up having additional what are called participating costs that can be funded through federal aid, you can add additional federal aid to those projects. And that's exactly the case that the city of Zeeland faced when their project, their Riley Street project, went through bid letting earlier this month. It came in, it had been programmed in the tip at $250,000. Final bids came in at $311,000. So the amount of federal aid eligible for that project, we had it in the tip at $186,000. It was eligible for up to $230,000. So that is an administrative modification that is being made to the tip. So the federal funding for Riley Street's going from $186,000 to $230,000, which would decrease the local match from the $125,733 showed there to $81,733, if you're keeping track of that. And we have processed that for payment. It is my understanding that undertaking this does not negatively impact the federal funding available for any other local project that's receiving federal aid. We're just taking advantage of this new flexibility that is out there as well, if we can. That project was, let very soon after this policy became effective, so we're going to do our best to pick up that roughly additional $44,000 in federal funding. We'll see if we're successful. So I want to make you aware that that activity is occurring as well. Any questions regarding what we call those administrative modifications to the 17 program? If not, then I'll move on to the last item under in the transportation program that I'm handling, item E, repeal of the MPO coordination rule. You may recall that last summer, Elisa had talked to you about a rule that had been proposed by the U.S. Department of Transportation and Secretary Fox at the time. And this rule said that if one MPO has an urbanized area that encroaches the planning area of another MPO, one of a number of different things had to occur. One could be a merger of those two MPOs. Another could be merging the planning documents of those two MPOs, so UWPs and TIPs and long-range plans. The third was you could seek an exemption from the secretary if you didn't want to do that. We had that situation here where the urbanized portion of Muskegon came right down the lake and just crossed New Holland into Sheldon Shores, subdivision up in Port Sheldon. It incorporated about 20 homes, I believe, in that subdivision.
Fillmore Street, right?
I'm sorry, Fillmore. Yep, Fillmore. Yeah, the northern boundary of, into Sheldon Dunes. So at that time, we had said it's ludicrous that we should have to undertake any of those steps I just mentioned for an encroachment of that magnitude. And I don't believe that's really what USDOT was saying anyways, but that's how the rule was structured. You indicated your opposition to that. Those comments were sent forward to the document. The secretary, as he was walking out the door, signed the final rule and put it into effect. And with the change in administration, the Senate moved forward with something called hotlining. I had not been involved in hotlining before, but evidently that's a procedure where if there's no disagreement from any U.S. senator, it passes. And so the repeal of the MPO coordination rule, along with a host of other different rules, were hotlined through the Senate. So we certainly weighed in with our U.S. senators regarding our opposition to the MPO coordination rule. It was repealed by the Senate recently, and now has moved over to the House, where I don't think it's moving at quite the same pace. They've been busy with a few other things, but at some point, I think they will pick it up again as well. So I just wanted to let you know, I've been interacting with our U.S. senators regarding this. I intend to interact with our House representatives regarding the MPO coordination rule, because I do expect it to be repealed in the House as well. So again, that's just another one of those for your information types of things where, that the MACC staff is interacting with our delegation. Any questions regarding repealing the MPO coordination rule? All right.
Good job.
Thank you.
Any comments from MDOT?
Yeah, I got a couple. The first thing I want to mention is that a couple weeks ago, we went out to Allegan County to talk about the M40 project in Hamilton we have planned for 2018. It actually was a pre-design meeting in that there's a number of things we're looking at doing out there, some reconstructing, some widening on a limited basis, as well as some resurfacing. Jim was there and certainly had an interest in the project, and we took all that information before we started full design of that project and are mulling it over right now, and that's why I haven't been able to get back to you with any specifics, because we're still in that stage of looking at things and what we want to do. But it was a great meeting and well attended with a lot of good input, so I just want to let you know that. The other thing, to borrow one of my favorite terms from Steve Boltice, that your place setting is your 2017, that's 2007. The 2017 Fun Facts, Fast Facts from MDOT. And what this is a document just with information that, it's really a reference document. It's a quick reference document of what's going on throughout the state, not just with the department, but in other areas. For instance, in terms of MDOT, we have jurisdiction over almost 9,700 route miles throughout the state. We own 665 miles of railroad tracks. All driving combined throughout the whole state turns into an annual number of 95.1 billion of annual miles traveled on all our roads. So that's how much time is put into driving. How much length is put into driving by people throughout the state. Local transit systems, 30% of their funding comes from the state. Passenger rail, last year almost 700,000 passengers. Vehicle registration, almost 9 million vehicles are registered in the state of Michigan. That goes everything up from your biggest commercial trucks to your trailers that have license plates on them that make you wonder why they're even on the road. But those are all registered with the state of Michigan, and fees are collected. We talk about how many carpool lots we got throughout the state. Not just public carpool lots, but those where we partnered with Myers. That's in there. Another thing that's in there is the cost of road construction. For instance, to reconstruct a mile of freeway costs approximately $2 million. A revenue package is mentioned in there. The one thing that's an interesting part of that, at least personally to me, is that what's coming from the general fund. 2019, we're scheduled to get $150 million for transportation. 220, that goes up to 2020 goes up to $325 million. In 2021 and beyond, $600 million are supposed to come from the general fund, the fund transportation. How that all comes about is interesting for me, and something I'm going to certainly keep an eye on, just I guess from a personal interest standpoint. Freight, trucking accounts for 65% of freight moved throughout the state. Talks about how many trails and bike lanes we have throughout the state there. There's 235 airports across the state. Excuse me. And state revenue for 2017, it provides detailed forecasts of how much we're going to bring in with new transportation, through fees, and through gas tax increase. So it's a document, like I say, it's a reference document. It's one that we've put out for the last few years. I find it interesting. I refer to it from time to time, and I thought it would be something that would be interesting to bring to people here.
Yeah, thank you.
Question, Steve?
Yeah.
Do you have any update for us on the closure of M6?
They're still working on it because the attempt is to try to get it all done in 1 year.
This year?
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that it was moved up, for sure.
My brother-in-law told me that was financed by bonds and they're going to pay off or rebuilding. Is that true?
I'd have to look into that. I off the top of my head, I don't know. I do know that there was, unfortunately for the way that road is come apart and the high maintenance, we originally were going to do it next year. And I think we just got to the point where we couldn't wait anymore. So how the financial shells were moved to get the money there, I don't know. I'd have to look into it.
And they are planning on closing that road completely?
That's one of the plans, yes, but and the reason for doing that is to get it done on both bounds as fast as possible.
3 miles? Is that the extent of the 3 mile section would be replaced?
Yeah, I think from the west end, and I'm trying to think how far, but I guess I don't know.
Was that a different contractor in that one section, or?
The way it's been explained to me is that this was a different kind of concrete, that the concrete industry, like any other industry, is looking for ways to be more effective, trying a new formula, and I think there was also some shortages of materials, so they tried something different. It's one of these things that in the search for continuous improvement, didn't work. And it wasn't just here. I guess it didn't work in other states as well. So it's been unfortunate. It lasted enough to get past the warranty, but of course.
Definition of a warranty, right?
So it's been kind of a industry, maybe a regional industry type issue.
Yeah. Thank you.
Steve, in all fairness though, my understanding was this is when the Chinese were building all of their infrastructure for the Olympics. There was a worldwide shortage of concrete, which drove the prices up. And the resin that's used in the mix was not readily available because of the shortage. So MDOT adopted a different spec for the additives. I don't know that the contractor could be blamed for using a spec of concrete that was dictated by the contract. And I don't know that MDOT could be blamed because they were using what was the prevailing alternative mix at the time when the original material wasn't available. It's just one of those things. It was just an unfortunate lack of durability.
Blame it on the Chinese.
It's the Chinese.
Yeah, that's right.
No, you raise a good point, and certainly when you view it from both sides, I think that's fair. And you've shown much more understanding than some other people I have talked to about this issue in terms of how it came about. But then, those things happen. We don't want them to happen. It doesn't do us any good to have to go out and do this. It doesn't help the contractor's reputation. It doesn't help the industry's reputation. But it's not a, it's not a static industry as much as we think it is. There's, cement has changes, materials come into play, and all these other things. It's, things change year to year. So I guess, well, I'll just say things happen. I was on camera.
Yes, they do. Thank you. Good comments. Good comments. Appreciate that. All right, Steve.
Yeah, just a couple of administrative items here. Included in your agenda packet was the latest financial report. Revenues are sitting at 36.6%, expenses at 26.5%. We do have a couple line items we need to clean up with an amendment. Kind of holding off on that to see if we're going to get the grant that Kelly was referring to earlier. Once we hear if that's going to be a go or no go, we'll bring forth that amendment. Be happy to answer any questions, though, in the meantime that you might have on it. If there aren't any, then also included in the packet was the summary of the last executive committee meeting, and be happy to answer any questions regarding that. If there are any. And then lastly, under administrative issues, I have a request for your consideration today, and that is to combine the May and June policy meetings, and we would move the date to June 5 as indicated there on the agenda. And just asking folks if there are any concerns with doing that. We've done this now for the past few years and it's worked out really well. Any concerns regarding that? It is going to be an important meeting. We'll have the agency budget for your consideration that day. As Elisa mentioned earlier, the UWP would be before you for your consideration, so we certainly want to make sure we have a quorum.
I won't be there on that day.
Anybody else that knows they're going to have a conflict regarding that? It's the first.
May, June meeting combined.
Correct. Yeah. And that's the first Monday of the month in June.
Location?
We will be out at Zealand Town in June. That'll happen in June. Yeah, I was getting, because our April meeting's still going to be in Lake Town, but the June 5 meeting will be in, in the Promised Land.
Jerry, thank you for hosting out here, beautiful Park Township.
First thing I'd like to do is introduce one of the major new positive changes we have. We got a lot of change going on. Howard, thank our manager. We have Howard hop in at the end here. This is week 10 for Howard. It makes me nervous when I keep counting the weeks.
It makes me nervous.
The fact is, he's been here 10 weeks and he's got 6 months worth of work done. He really has. He's really been hard charging.
Thank you.
We've got a lot of change. We got one from the manager. We had Bill Cousins as our interim. You met him. He was phenomenal and helped transition. Jerry Felix has been back to assist. We've got 4 new board members out of our 7. So we've had track shoes on. They took office November 20th at noon on a Sunday. The very next night they were interviewing manager candidates. So we've been keeping them very busy. And it looks like we got a very good board. We might just add that. As we all know, every once in a while you get a member or two where it's not quite as positive. It's actually fun to come to board meetings again. I'll just leave it at that. Very exciting thing that happened, and I think you're aware of it. It's been in the news, and that is a huge step forward for our township. We believe in that is getting involved in public transit. And thanks to the MACC, thanks to Steve, Melissa, and staff, and several other people that have really helped us, I think, do it the right way. Our board, our new board, a brand new board, 4 people who didn't know anything about this, and Steve came and made a presentation. A couple weeks later, we had a budget work session, and they approved unanimously that we move forward with the public transit project, which I think is the right thing to do. We think we got enough data to be convinced that there's a need out there. Maybe not to the same extent some other communities, but enough to justify doing what we're doing. So we're really excited about that. I think that's a benefit for the whole area. Another exciting thing that's going to be going off for very, very soon, and thanks again to Steve and the MACC and this group, there's on the sheet that you just saw a few minutes ago, there's $400,000 going to a non-motorized a bike path. I know that's not politically correct. That's going to be pretty close to concluding. We maybe have a mile or two here, but that will be our 54th mile of paved pathway. And that's 160th going north from James up to Quincy. It's been a tough one. We'll just leave it at that. And Steve, everything is signed. It came down to the wire, fell through about 5 times more than I told you, because we were concerned about not only getting it done, but meeting the timelines and the requirements of the grant. And I think we're there. I think we can say we're there. Other thing that I just mentioned, and we'll be looking to some people, Howard, I'm looking at you, a little help and guidance. John Schultz asked Howard and I to meet with him at Fillmore Complex a couple weeks ago, and he included Paul Sack, who I think is the planner. He's at least in the planning department. Paul lives in Park Township. And we're starting to look at the added 1 foot to Lakeshore. I think the county's will be next year in 2018 coming south from New Holland to Riley. And we would like to see that extra width in there for the bike people. And we're getting an early start. We had mentioned that to our board already as part of our budget planning process. We hope that we're going to still see the same participation from the county and from, well, there was, I think, a crowdfunding project, a good share of that, I think, came from private funds. So we're getting not too early to start, but certainly the bike folks are going to have a great interest, and we're going to have to all be working together on what, and at least of that there. We have to talk this up. I think we'll have 3 separate sections, I believe, over 3 years on our part of Lakeshore. So we're hoping that this can. Last thing I got to say is Howard might have wiffle ball. And, we corrected the minutes back to pickleball. You know what? I didn't know you were doing that. I certainly didn't know from reading the minutes, so I'm glad it said wiffle ball, now it says pickleball. It appears we're going to have pickleball here finally too, and part of it is because you and some others have done it, it's really taken off, and we're looking forward to that. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good comments, Terry. Any other member comments around the table? Yes, Jim.
Yes, just prior to your last meeting, one of the institutions that the MACC helped create and then spun off, the West Michigan Airport Authority, received an award for the Facility of the Year. So above those 235 airports that Steve referenced, 18 of them are air carrier airports, so 217 of those 217 for the second time in 10 years. What was Tulip City and now is West Michigan Regional Airport received the Facility of the Year award. The other recipient of the Facility of the Year award, to kind of follow a conversation we had earlier, was Detroit Metro Airport with a runway replacement, which was having to be replaced earlier than anticipated because of the deficiencies in the pavement that we had experienced in M6. So it was a materials issue apparently during that time period. So.
Very good. Thank you, and have a good spring break, everyone. Do we need a motion to adjourn?
We don't, but just a reminder that next month we'll be gathering over at Laketown Township.
Okay. Have a good spring break, everyone.
Good job.